Honde Onde Mtsan. This is Thongya, a podcast by the District 7 Legislative Office. All right, Honde Onde Batsan. Welcome back to Thongya, our District 7 podcast. Here with my co-host, Dr. Jerry Bread.
How do you do, sir?
I'm doing well. Well, welcome back this month. We're focused on education this month. We have the director of our Kiowa Education Agency or department from the tribe, and she's the head of a whole division. What is a division? Well, she's over the whole agency. It encompasses many programs, higher education, adult education. There's a lot of programs that she's over, and her name is Dr. Toni Tsatoke-Mule. I've known her for many years. I think it's been over 25 years I've known Dr. Tsatoke-Mule. We were just talking about that at lunch. And
I was a newborn.
That's right.
As long as you went to school here for 25 years.
1999 is when I met her.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've known each other a long time. And Dr. Brett, I've known you that same.
Yeah.
We've been together 25 years too,
well,
Dr. Brett.
I've known Toni since she was born.
Oh, that's true.
I remember when she's a little girl running around.
Yeah. Well, today we're here. Thank you, Dr. Tsatoke-Mule, for joining us today on our podcast. And we're going to have this is a discussion over our education programs as a tribe, and I want to welcome you. And we'll just start off and let you give an introduction, however you'd like to, and talk about your role as the executive director for the Kiowa Education Agency.
Okay, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Believe it or not, I've always had an interest in TV and radio. When I attended school at a high school, I took a TV productions class and was a part of a filming of a PSA and things like that. So this has always been of interest to me. And when COVID, we were affected by COVID, a lot of people had to move online, including our classes at the time. So I enjoyed it. I enjoy the Zoom platform and being able to connect with people virtually. So thank you both for having me. I'm a fan of your podcast. I actually listen to it, and I think it's a great tool to keep our citizens engaged and informed. And also, you guys are quite entertaining as well. So,
I hope.
You haven't heard our best jokes yet.
So, I appreciate the things that you do too, just to share cultural knowledge. We know that many of our Kiowa people do not have, elders anymore, unfortunately, and so we rely on these different methods and technologies that we have today. But my name is Toni Tsatoke-Mule. Aonma is my Kiowa name. It was given to me by passed down to me, I should say, from my great grandmother. Her name was Minnie Eagleheart, and I come from the Hompe, the Tsatoke families, as well as the Tapido and the Eagleheart families, and also the Hunt family as well. I was adopted by the Hunt Simmons family as well, so have a lot of relations around home. And I'm in my new role. I started with a language program that was grant funded. So I actually worked remotely for the tribe for several years. And then I applied for the director of the Department of Higher Education, and then transitioned into my role now, which is the executive director for the Kiowa Education Division, also known as the KEA. So we oversee all the way from our babies and our child care centers, all the way up to adult learners and our career development. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be with both of you, related to you both, and just want to be a good relative to all the people that we serve.
Thank you, Dr. Tsatoke-Mule. I'll call you Toni today. That's a lot to say.
Okay, yes, it is.
First question, I have is a lot of people are unfamiliar of how much support our Kiowa Education Division gets from the federal government. In terms of grants, you kind of give us a brief summary of what programs are operating on grants, and then kind of break that down with what is tribally funded, if you wouldn't.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that probably a good majority of the funding that we get are federal funds. And so I would say for a large this is just my perspective. I'll speak from my personal
absolutely.
perspective. I think that a lot of the, moving from a department to a division is really widening our focus from just our college students, because the higher education department primarily served adults. You didn't get the benefits of anything from our higher education department until you graduated from high school. And even that department oversaw the recognition of high school graduation. So, from the time that a person might graduate from Head Start, they were pretty much on their own. If they were served, they were probably served through Johnson O'Malley programs that were administered through their schools, or Title VI Indian education programs also administered through the school districts. And so for the Kiowa tribe, I think largely there was a big gap there. And that was one of the first steps that I took whenever I transitioned, was to kind of see where the gaps were. So we looked at brought all of these different programs and departments together, and we started meeting as a division. And I have shared this before, that I think people were a little bit apprehensive at first because they wanted to know, what are you doing? Why are we meeting? People were very much working in a silo work environment and just administering grants. That's all we were doing, and kind of even had identity of a grant. So people identified by these grants that had no meaning culturally or otherwise to our Kiowa community. So we're starting to do a little bit of rebranding and renaming things, because these acronyms that we use, people don't even know, what that means or where that comes from. And we really want to start to think about and putting our culture at the forefront of everything that we do.
Absolutely.
So part of that is, building a mission statement and kind of starting to build out some of those I think guiding principles that we apply. And part of that work was trying to get people to understand that if you're serving somebody in the child care system and they haven't started school yet, those will be the same people that you serve at the end of their school career when they graduate from high school and they apply to higher education, hopefully, or vocational training or adult on-the-job training or those types of things. And just getting people to realize that these are the same people. You're just serving them at different phases in their lives. And so it was really a matter of bringing people to the table. And I think that now we're starting to see a little bit of the fruits of that because people are working together. You see more outreach events and activities where you have multiple kind of grants and programs and departments working together, because each one of us just has a little bit of resource, but if we put those things together, we can have a greater impact and a wider reach. And so
supporting one another, I think that was so I'll just be honest, that was my vision when I was in your position, because I was the director of higher education, and that was something we had talked about is that executive director role was monitoring, I think, 30 programs. That was one person to be the executive over 30 programs. And I think it was kind of like, that's a lot. That's a lot for anybody to administrate. So I said, let's break this down into 4 divisions. And one of the divisions was the educational agency. And I think it's a good opportunity to, like you said, get out of those silos and collaborate using culture and language, and then a natural progression of tracking these people through the education system that we are working on. I wouldn't say it's never a finished project. It's going to be adapting to the times that, in the future. I hope that we continue to collaborate, breaking down those barriers so we can all work together. Because, like you said, we have a limited amount of resources. Why shouldn't we be working more collaboratively to break, and focus on education for our people? Dr. Brady, you got a question?
Sure, I got a comment and question in terms of breaking down what you mentioned. A lot of our people out in the communities and throughout the nation, for that fact, are really not familiar with the contextual background of higher or tribal education per se. And by that I mean how this evolved over a period of time, where it came from, what's the future of it. So when it comes to the funding aspect of it, the context of it, I would venture to say that 60%, and that's being generous, of the funding comes specifically from a certain act out of Congress that happened 50 years ago. The Self-Determination Act, Educational Assistance Act. What about, other than federal funds, here's the context. Are there other monies that you requested, or the department or whatever agency, whatever requested within the tribe or through your legislators for funding from tribal monies other than the federal buck itself? What are the means to generating that, if it is, as far as tribal monies are concerned? And have y'all asked for any? Have we shared any of that other than just that 638 money?
Yeah, so we do have a supplement that was in place during Warren's tenure, and that's something that has continued. And when I first came in, we were looking at a lot of shortfalls because there was a lot of budget work that had to be corrected. And so we tried to, we had to adjust the level of awards. And we also started to look into the guidelines a little bit more, and doing some research and contacting the BIA. And what we found out is that 638 money is for an individual getting their primary degree or their first degree. So that could be an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, but there's nowhere in the reporting where you would report anyone getting a master's degree or beyond. And as we know, Kiowa people are highly educated. I mean, I don't know if we've ever done a formal study about that, but I would venture to say that we're highly educated. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, and that's probably something that we should look at. And so that's something that we realize that we can't use our 638 funds to fund those, but we still have a good portion of students, and we don't want to stifle that progress, right? We want to support that. So we started to use some of our tribal, I call them tribal enabled funds. That's what the budget was titled when I came into the position. And so our TEF account is how we supplement our graduate students. That's how we also supplement to some degree some of the supplemental education things that come up that there's no particular program that's going to help somebody go to a conference or go to travel abroad and those kinds of things. So we can use a little bit of that TEF money for that. And that's also the funds that support the graduation incentives and those kind of, not really bonuses, but they're kind of awards for people that get, I don't know, a 4.0 or those kinds of academic awards.
What did y'all talk about when you talked about the expansion from higher ed to other attributes of education, little bitty ones, middle school, high school, services, etc.? What was the conversation in terms of funding where you were going to receive it? Or did y'all consider, or could they, I don't even know if they can, really renegotiate that 638 thrust where you can use it in other areas besides just what was designated initially? So the funding area is what I'm interested in, and how y'all go about funding other areas besides higher education.
Okay. So what we looked at is the child care dollars are federal funds, and those only serve up to a certain age. I believe it's 12. And so, and then you go to the next group, between child care, and not everybody can have a place in the child care. I mean, it's there's a ratio there, and not everybody lives in that location, right? So not everybody's served by child care, but there is a gap between those 12 to 13-year-olds to, I would say, 17, to where you have students that are graduating from high school. So we renamed it to expand it and to kind of aim it towards more leadership development. It used to be sports and activities.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And it's been renamed to Kiowa Youth Leadership Development Program. And so it's not just about sports and activities, and we're not saying those are bad. Of course, those, you learn a lot of lessons. There's a lot of worth and value in those things. But what are we doing for our kids that don't play sports? What are we doing for our academic focused kids, or people that want to do art or music, or all the different things that kids also help kids grow and develop and things like that. So those funds are more discretionary tribal funds, but there's a focus. So once we brought all those entities together and we surveyed everybody and said, what's your demographic that you serve? How many kids do you serve, et cetera? Then we mapped all that out, and that's what we've been presenting to some of these conferences. And so when we saw that, the gap was between 10 and 17-year-olds. And so that's where we're focused. And so that's why you might see a lot of things right now on the youth council. That's because that's something that's geared towards them. And we're trying to give them a focus where prior to these years, there's been a little bit of a gap there. So that's also tribal funds. And in addition to that, we went after and going to some of these conferences to kind of present our journey as this tribal agency, but also to look at what other opportunities are out there. And what we found out is that tribes can administer their own Johnson O'Malley programs if the schools don't do it. So last summer, we started to contact and put the word out that if your child attends a school and they're not served by Johnson O'Malley, apply to our program. And we're going to start, what you have to do is do a student count. And that student count has to be verified, that they go to their enrollment in the school has to be verified. Their tribal enrollment has to be verified. So we did all of that legwork and we submitted it to the Office of Indian Education. And we just got word, maybe I would say within the last month and a half, there's, because of all of this interruption in the federal funds, there's been a little bit of a slowdown, or I would say a stop at this point, because we're waiting for those funds. But we did get word that there was a little increment of funding that was released. And so what that tells us is that our application was approved, because they wouldn't have released the first, increment if they were going to deny our application. So the good news is, for anybody listening to this podcast, if you share that data and information with us, is that we're going to be able to administer in the future our Kiowa Johnson O'Malley program.
When it comes to those specific, this is the contextual bit again. I kind of harp on that. I think Warren will tell you about it in terms of, other than the content, what we have today and what brought it about. So in the context of JOM, for example, how many students would you say do they have to be Kiowa and JOM, or can they just be native students in certain areas? Or are we specific with this concept of Kiowa JOM to the tribal service area, or is it throughout the state as far as services to these students, supplemental services? So how are y'all talking about dealing with that broad diversity population all over the state, or have y'all talked about it?
Yes. So we are, of course, we're tied to whatever their guidelines are, but so long as they are not served by their school district or another tribe, we can serve them, even if they're non-Kiowa.
Okay. I guess my question, one of my questions was on the aspect of service areas. I know 638 grants, the higher education grant is nationwide, it's opened up. But adult vocational training would be my concern. There are a lot of Kiowa students out there that want to go to adult vocational training programs, but they're inhibited by the service area component, meaning they don't live down there within the area. They might live in Oklahoma City, but it kind of locks them out from vocational programming. Is there a way to renegotiate that service area component to maybe enlarge it, maybe even do a radius 200 miles from Carnegie or the state of Oklahoma? Is there a way to renegotiate? Do you know?
So, yeah, I feel like that was a question that's been asked before. At the time, the specialist did contact the BIA to find out if there's a way to change that, or and at that time there wasn't. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a way to do it. But yeah, you are kind of bound by those service areas. And then I think what people kind of misinterpret also about some of the programs that are like that adult vocational program is we also have our program that's funded through the Department of Labor. But that program is not funded by our tribal enrollment. So this gets into some of the nitty gritty. right? That's what Dr. Brett's talking about. Some of the context is that people feel like all of our issues are an tribal enrollment problem. And if we solve that problem, then everybody gets access to everything. We'll have lots of funding and it's going to multiply by our enrollment. And that's not how it works. It is taken from census data. So basically what the tribe with a lot of these programs are doing, they're functioning in the same role as the state. And we're serving people in this locality just like the state would serve somebody that's living in Oklahoma City. So sometimes when people see a service and they feel like, oh, I'm being left out because I don't live in this area, that's not true. It's just that the tribe is administering that same program for the people that live around here, but wherever you live, you're served you're in a different geographic area. So if you live in Tulsa, then you need to reach out to your Liheap or Kiowa or wherever you are, and they're going to give you the same services that we're doing here.
Somebody's covering
it. Yeah, because that's something that they're very, of course, very diligent about is double dipping and, kind of duplicating services. And so everything is basically mapped out, and you cover this area here. And it would be unfair to serve somebody outside of that because they should be served by their office wherever they live.
So there's been some talk amongst the administration about the tribe becoming a 477 self-governance tribe. If that happens in the future, does the tribe have a little bit more autonomy to establish who gets served and where that money gets utilized, do you think?
Yeah, I think that it will. That will be the effect.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
So we can probably safely say we establish what service area, whether that be, 200 miles from tribal headquarters or the state of Oklahoma, we get to establish that, right?
Right.
Another concern, I'm going to call it now, instead of an issue, has to do with us understanding as a tribe where we rest currently in the education of our people. Of course, they're scattered all over the United States, and that's a big, heavy duty for our legislator in District 7 to go out and represent, people that are all over the country. So I'm looking at the concept of research and data collection, the demographics. I think you mentioned a minute ago we haven't determined yet, because we haven't done that type of work yet recently, and by recently I don't mean 20 years ago. So what role do you see us playing, not the OU or OSU or Cameron, or what role do you see us playing as a tribe in doing our own research and data collection pertinent to education of our people? I really don't think we know the demographics of our people other than what is reported to us through JOM, our federal programs, or the public schools. And I don't know if we feel like we're being too invasive of asking public schools how many Kiowa students you have, not Indians, but Kiowas that we're interested in our service area especially. And a big hot question I've always had about particular context, again, about one particular area was higher ed, where do most of our Kiowa students go to college at in this country, in this state, in this region? And have we made any type of effort to partnership with those schools that have, I'm not going to say abundance, but have a significant number of Kiowas, as we determine, going to school there as far as their services are concerned? Now that DEI is being attacked, or being eliminated really somewhat in our colleges, our universities, and what does our research, or are we going to go that way anytime soon, or are we going to continue to let other entities do it for us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one thing that's been a big asset to us, and we're able to grow our staff a little bit by some of this external funding, is that we now have a STEP coordinator. And I know sometimes people see those acronyms and are like, what the heck is a STEP coordinator, right? It's a state tribal education partnership coordinator. So we have a person on staff that is looking at those kinds of things exactly. And so what I think has happened for many years is not that people aren't working hard. It's that they're kind of inundated by the day-to-day, kinds of things that are required of any grant. in any contract. So when we have a contract, it has to be renewed. There's reporting, there's financial reporting, there's academic, student data and things like that. That's given to the external funder. And then you're processing applications, which we were still doing paper applications until
2 years ago.
Yeah, whenever we started the portal. And so it's not that I think sometimes people from the outside looking in don't realize how busy that everybody really is. I don't know what the perception is, and it's not just something that's specific to Kiowa, but when you hear people, talking in their tribal communities or talking about tribal, organizations and things like that, sometimes there's a negative connotation to it. But from what I observed, especially when I first came in, and I was pretty much on just like a tour of just observing how things work. People are working really hard to just keep things afloat.
Yeah.
And so I think that when we make advances like with, moving things to electronic processing and we use ways where we're not walking paperwork around to get signed anymore, and we use, the technologies that are available, things become more efficient. Now we're starting to kind of be able to take a breath and look around, and some of our staff are able to do the job that they were really intended to do. But up until this point, it's been checking for your transcript. Did your transcript come in, or making copies for people? It's paperwork. And so they were very, very busy. But I think now we're just now getting to the point where we're starting to take a step back to say, okay, what data would we really benefit from knowing and from getting from our community? So anytime we do something, now we're kind of starting to be more mindful of that. During the holidays, we got a donation in conjunction with, I think it was one of the tribes in Shawnee, either the Potawatomi or the absentee Shawnee. I don't know. We go over there for all of their TED events and things like that. But anyway, through that, just word of mouth, we got a donation of toys, and we were able to do a second toy distribution aside from the Toys for Tots that our Head Start programs do. And so just to add this last little tidbit. So what we did is, instead of just giving those toys out like we normally would, everything has like a question. I said, I don't care if it's just 2 questions. We need to always try to get some information from the people that we're serving. What do you really want? What do you need? Is this more important? Prioritize the things that we're doing. And so we were able to, grab some data. Even at a toy distribution, we can grab data from the community.
Okay, well, some clarity here for our audience again. There's 2 concepts you mentioned that I think you need to clarify. First, you mentioned STEP. And then you mentioned the concept of the Kiowa Education Agency concept. Are those 2 related in some manner? The STEP program. Explain what a STEP program is, and is that where we're getting some funding through the Kiowa tribe to minister some of these programs or address the administration of public school programs? Experience in it, partnerships with them, more so the public schools. Is there funding there that's been applied for and granted to the tribe called STEP?
No, not service. It's not direct services, but what it does is it funds that person to be able to focus on how do we work with the state? What does the state have that's available to the tribe that the tribe has not taken advantage of? How visible is the Kiowa tribe with the State Department of Education when they do something like a curriculum study, or they're right now textbook stuff, the curriculum that they're teaching? Are we visible? Are they even aware of the Kiowa tribe and the needs? Because we're a smaller tribe, they kind of forget about us. But because we are, we do have this relationship because of this grant. I think that they know all of us by name. I think if they see us walking down the hall at one of these conferences, they know us now. And so it really has heightened the visibility of the Kiowa tribe as far as education goes, just because of that grant. And like I said, it's not direct services, but it does give us an extra staff person to look at that stuff, because like I said, all the staff are just serving, community members on a daily basis.
Partnerships with other schools or other tribes per se is what you say. That back to that higher education question, and I'm encouraging y'all to do research, data collection, demographic information. particular to being a visionary person, not a status quo person as the tribe is concerned. That's just my own personal philosophy. I'm going to take it to you that you're also a visionary person, being educated in terms of what is in store for the future of tribal education for our Kiowa people, while you're trying to maintain a quality that we've achieved right now to the status quo bit. But I'm concerned about higher education, and with the cutbacks that we're looking at, not official yet, as I understand it, but when it comes to affecting tribal colleges in this country, also our own tribal participation in higher education. Do you envision some things taking place that will affect that? And here in Oklahoma, with our Kiowa tribe, and if so, that's why the question where most of our students go to. Look what happened to Haskell. Look what happened to Sippy. More importantly, look what happened to Bacon when it comes to financial situations. And so I just want to kind of get a feel for you in that sense of what your philosophy is as far as visionary goals and objectives are concerned for our tribe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the things that you talked about in terms of we never really kind of accept things, we never become complacent. I think that's very Kiowa centric. That's very much a Kiowa trait, and so I don't think that I can undo that. And sometimes I have to tell my staff, especially if we're going forward with a lot of changes and things like that, or even our community. Sometimes if they see something that's changing and they don't understand why, I think I'm starting to get that kind of trust from people that there's a reason why we do things. We don't just do them because that's the way we always have done them. There's a reason. Everything is kind of thought out, and I think they're getting to the point now where they're kind of trusting that process, because we see a little bit of that, of the results of some of those changes. Oh, that's why we did that. Oh, now I see. Yeah. So I appreciate that that point of view, and that's just something I think that is ingrained in us. And I mean, I don't know any other way to be. So honestly, I'm not here to just keep things afloat. I'm here to change things and change the trajectory of what we're doing, and open up opportunities, do things differently, try new things, open up new opportunities for people. And sometimes it's not necessarily funding. It's just someone has to plan and back that up to be able to, make people aware of these different opportunities that are out there. Like concurrent enrollment is one of them. Top 3, I'm going to say 3. I'm not going to say 10. It's too many. We don't have time for it. But in your opinion, professionally speaking, with your schooling you've had here, through the program, with your research and with your blah, 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 et cetera, what do you feel are the top 3 educational issues of our Kiowa tribe? Very broad, general question, not a hot one, just to know, back and forth, rhetorical question. Mm-hmm. The 3 top priorities? Yeah, what do you think? Not the top one, but the top 3. Mm-hmm. I think that we really should be looking at trying to provide wraparound services for our tribal members. We talk about how important our tribal employees are. Mm-hmm. We say that we want people our best and brightest to come back and work for us. But if they do that, are we supporting them? The ones that are raising families, do they have a place to? At one point, our child care director needed child care, didn't have child care. So, it's just when these kinds of things come up, it really opens your eyes to, if we really mean that, when we say that, then what are we doing to support those people? Are we helping them to go for that advanced degree? How are we helping them do that? Are we helping them in their daily needs with their families and childcare and things like that? So I would say moving towards wraparound services for our tribal employees, because they're not just workers. They are part of our tribe. These are our people, and they're working for their own people. And so I think that we need to recognize that and really prioritize that, and not vilify them because they're tribal employees, because sometimes you hear that, you read that, and it's like they're doing that with purpose. They're not just doing that for any other reason that I can see. What other benefit would there be? A lot of them are very invested in what they do, and they believe in it, and they work hard. So that would be one. I would like to see us have a Boys and Girls Club. I would like to see us there's a lot of opportunities and grant opportunities that are open when you have that, that label and that title and you're a part of that charter. So that's something that we're working on right now. I would say that would be a big one. And then I mentioned concurrent enrollment. I think that's another one. I don't think enough of our students take advantage of that. And we launched a program to give incentive to students that will take concurrent enrollment. And the partnership, you mentioned something about the schools that we partner with. One of our partners is the 2-year community college in El Reno. Redlands. Redlands, yeah. So we did a cost analysis with the other area colleges. I won't name them. I'm not going to say which ones they were, but but the rates, a lot of those are transferable gen ed classes. A lot of them have free electronic books, and I'm not sure if it's the school counselors that kind of I don't know if they influence the schools that they enroll in, but sometimes you wonder, why are you taking this class from this school and Redlands offers it for $400 less and it's the same credit. And if you go through this route, you're going to have $300 left over because we're going to give you an incentive if you go there. So I really want to just make it known to our community out there that Redlands Community College is one of our partners. Good. And so if you go there for concurrent classes, then that you're going to qualify for that incentive.
So, Toni, one of the things I appreciate about the work that you're doing is, me and Dr. Brett have discussed this before, is being an advocate for our educational needs of our citizens. And I see you at different conferences, the Sovereignty Symposium last week, and then we were both on the consultation for the Bureau of Indian Affairs when they were doing that one here in June. Share, if you would, share with us your concerns that you shared with the BIA in that consultation, because I know you were going to submit written notes. If you could kind of summarize that for us, what were the top issues or concerns you have as the lead educational advocate for education in our Kiowa community?
Well, I think that, of course, everybody is concerned with the funding and what are we going to do if this... And basically, a lot of the tribal leaders said this. It sounds like these decisions have already been made, and we're kind of an afterthought that, oh yeah, we're supposed to get consultation from the tribes, but then nobody was there to answer any questions. That would be one concern. Is it's not a consultation if the information is only going one way. And so my concern is that when you're sitting in the audience with different people that are in executive positions or tribal leadership positions, is that you feel like if one person says something, okay, good, that's on the record, they said it. But as you know, Dr. Brett, with data and statistics and how research goes, something has to be said over and over and over again for it to be significant, right? If it's said one time, I mean, it may be represented, but it doesn't seem significant because only one person said it. So I heard a lot of people come to the mic, and whenever, somebody was taking record of that, and that'll be transcribed, I'm sure, at some point, but people would say, I agree with the last person. And I feel like that's going to be lost in the data if it's not stated explicitly. Even though you feel like you're being repetitive because someone already said it, it's important to be on record that I'm speaking for the Kiowa tribe, and this is a concern for us as well.
I think it was a little scripted. It seems like there was a meeting where everybody picked different topics. I agree with you. I see what you mean. If we're not saying the same thing over and over, it seemed like all the tribal leaders had a topic to bring up. And you're right. There was no two-way dialogue. They didn't give you any answers. They were they're just listening. So my fear is they're going to go back and say, yeah, we consulted with you after the fact and listened to your concerns, and then we went back and made our plan anyway. Yeah. So that's my real concern. But I appreciate you sharing those, written notes with the BIA on what your lead concerns are.
In the past years, we, baby boomers,
define baby boomers.
Baby boomers, those are probably about 60, 70 years and older right now, who are now your elders. So listen and be quiet. No, just a joke here, teasing it. But it seems like to me, looking at today and our native people in education as compared to then, and it's just my opinion, that there was a lot more unification among the baby boomers. As a result, we had leadership that spoke for more of us than just a lot speaking for. That's why I write about, too many Indians and not enough chiefs now. That's my metaphor for saying what it used to be 50 years ago. Too many chiefs and not enough Indians. So when it comes to today, in my observation and some of the research I've been doing, I got a collection of articles from the past year, which is over 500 from internet, from Nation, Native News, online news, and I do a big content analysis on each of those articles right there to ascertain trend analysis around here. That's kind of my background in research, and I looked at leadership, and I don't see the same characteristics of group or unity in education among our tribal educators or Indian educators that I saw 40 years ago. And it's not a criticism. Mm-hmm. It's an observation. Mm-hmm. It's an opinion. It's research to give to you and say, I like the idea of the boys club, girls club, because to me that's where it begins in leadership when they're little, when they're young. I like the youth council. I think it's an excellent thing, but it's got to be consistent. Mm-hmm. It can't be going on for 1, 2 years, 2 years, then it disappears.
Right.
So that's why I think it's so important to have good, strong, visionary people who have good leadership skills. I mean, we have a lot of status quo people. I mean, we have that a great deal, but I think it's something that we need to work hard about in the communities, and that's to encourage our parents, our younger parents, about their children, the school culture versus the home culture, and how critical that is to our identity as Native people. Mm-hmm. And I think we kind of slipped on it, not just Kiowa people. I'm talking about a lot of Indian people from what I've read and observed and did some analysis on. So a lot of times I've encouraged Warren at Tulsa, we need to have a few forums of our own in terms of Kiowa tribal services or Kiowa education. So I would encourage a gathering at times. And I know we've done, one this past year or two on Educational Summit?
Yes.
I don't know how well it was attended, but I wrote some people real hard about doing that. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to come because of my health at one time. But I encourage that again to get out and talk with people like you're doing right now. I appreciate it. I'm very, very proud of your accomplishments here, not just at the university. I'm respectful for what you've done, and I look forward to you doing even more, but it's a very difficult time right now in education for all of us as Native people, not just for Kiowa people. Mm-hmm.
Toni, as the District 7 legislator, me and you have talked, and I've been proud to support education agency and whatever its needs may be. Even like me and you have worked together on the back-to-school supplies and meeting those needs, and so you always have my support, but I guess my question right now is, what is the current need of the education agency in terms of legislation? Is there anything that we might need to do as a legislature to show our support? I mean, right now we're going through this budget process, which has been a hard challenge to get through, but we'll get through it. And one of the things is back to school funding wasn't on there, and we put it back in. So I think
it going to stay there
for this next fiscal year? If as long as I'm the legislator, it'll stay there.
No veto.
We have to figure out where we find that from, and it was a very critical discussion to have with the executive branch. And I'll be honest, I hear remarks from the executive branch said, "Well, if the money's not there, we're not going to be able to do it." Well, I think it's their responsibility to find the money and prioritize that funding. And so that's what I said as a legislator. Yeah. We all should be supportive of the education of our citizens. And these citizens need our support for back-to-school supplies, back-to-school vouchers. There are a lot of people struggling that need that financial and educational support, and who else is going to give it to them, So that's been a discussion. So what's your concern right now in terms of like what your needs may be in terms of legislation?
Well, I do want to say that I feel heard. The times that the legislature has asked to meet, I'm always willing to meet with you all and give you an update on what we're working on and current priorities and things like that. The back to school is actually one of the top priorities when it came to asking the community members, out of all of these different ideas, concepts, priorities, all these different things, which ones are most important? And on there was tribal college, charter school, after school program, language programs, culture, all the gamut. And what's most important? What does your family need? And I tell you that the assistance for clothing and school supplies is at the top of that list. And it's always at the top of the list. So yes, it's something that not everyone lives in that vicinity, so they wouldn't benefit from a brick and mortar school. So there's some people that they're never going to benefit from that. So that's not something that they would ever support. But if you can provide something as basic and simple as helping a family give their student and their children a successful start to the school year, and in fact, even some of them wanted something more seasonal, like something like that back to school money, you know how quickly that goes. It goes quick. So whenever they have their school break and they're coming back from winter, we don't provide any help with gloves and hats and coats and that kind of thing. And that's what their kids need at, in the middle of the academic year. So that was another thing that was a high priority. I can tell you that those things rank higher than any of these other things that are on these different strategic plans, which are not, I'm not to say that those aren't valuable and those aren't things that valued and that we'll work towards, but the very basic things are what all of our families really benefit from.
When it comes to this podcast, we've talked about it, him and I, as well as other people about it. And being co-host doesn't mean that I don't have a say-so as a citizen of the tribe. And sometimes the legislator will ask a question ask me that question. I'm a tribal member, and I got a response for you to look at times. And as a citizen of the tribe and knowing the role of the legislators in governance of our tribe, the way it works, supposed to work, doesn't always work that way, but it's supposed to work that way. We would hope it will eventually. We're going to have to resolute before we can give you what they say they want. You say the whole gambit, and one of our goals is to break it down to where we get to what is the most important of all of those 30 results, blah, blah, blah. So I will say before you do that, you're going to have to conduct some research. And if anything the legislators can do right now for education, in my opinion, is resolute some type of legislation that requires research be done, databases established for the education department. And they can do that as legislators and throw it in there for funding possibly to the KIC. And we, in terms as citizens, can vote on it, whether we think it's appropriate, whether we think it, if not, we can do that if we ever get our act together on KIC. So as a citizen, that's my response to the question now. It's very precarious, in my opinion, to ask the employee, because there's some politics attached to that too, whenever people hear. As far as the citizenship is concerned, I like that freedom of speech where we can speak our minds here. So I think our legislators need to start addressing research and data collection, demographics of where we're at today, who we are, especially in education, because it's hard to even answer a simple question like what school has the most Kiowas going to school at it here in Oklahoma, public school as well as colleges. You would think, well, Cameron or blah, 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 but I'm familiar with Riddlands and what's taking place up there. So it's good our listeners to phone in or write in or email the response to the question he asked you as to what we feel like. But it's better we can formalize it if necessary in the next year or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely something that we can do. We're using a lot of different tools to gather information. And like I said, our STEP coordinator usually oversees that. Yeah. There's a whole lot faster to create something that's a confidential. And I like the open answers too, where people feel free to answer honestly and freely, like put it all down. So yeah, we do a lot of that, starting to do a lot of that with the survey links and things like that, and people can feel free. It's not attached to your email or anything like that. They can answer it freely as far as what they really want and what they don't want.
So like Facebook to me.
So one of the one of the things on Dr. Brett's wish list is a
Yeah.
research and development department, right? That people can use. And I think that's always been, we need to look into that more. How do we do that? But that's going to be something we have to do with the executive branch because, yeah, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. I understand, but yeah, we definitely need to sift that out a little bit more. But Dr. Brady, you got any more questions?
No, I asked the questions I wanted to ask of Toni and giving her a chance to expand on some of the things we're doing, but I was more interested in terms as a citizens, the context behind why we're doing what we're doing, other than maintaining a status quo positioning. And I'm pleased to hear that she doesn't have that particular perspective. She's a visionary person. I would hope so after all the schooling, etc. And I would hope that y'all can work together to whatever means, through whatever means, as employee and a legislator. But we're out here too. Some of us people in District 7, and I'm a little bit anxious with our District 7 people because I want to hear more from them as far as what they think we need to do as a tribe. And I would encourage them again to respond, to react, and not necessarily to complain, but give us something we can work with as far as the tribe is concerned. We being citizens, as well as our employees, as well as our legislators, and it's something that I like to see more of before we move on, as far as that's concerned.
Want to read what they think? Just go on Facebook, Dr. Brett.
Oh,
No, don't go on Facebook and say that. No. I want to thank you, Toni, for being with us today, and I'm glad to see you back home. Because we worked together here at the University of Oklahoma many years, and now you're working for your own people, and I'm glad to know that we have a person like you with that vision and your educational knowledge, even in language work, back there to kind of lead that education division. So we wish you all the best. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess my final thought was, something as simple as reading into record, our vision and our mission statement. It's something that helps our staff start to conceptualize why we're doing what we do.
Yeah.
We're not doing this work because the grant requires us to do it, right? This is these are things that are valuable to us. Mm-hmm. They're important to us, and sometimes they're important for different reasons than that what we're being asked to do by these different funding agencies and things like that. But we utilize what's available to us. A lot of times people have criticism of using the schools or being in the schools or looking at the schools as adversary, and we don't look at it like that. Mm-hmm. We look at it like we will, wherever our kids are, that's where we're going to be. And as Kiowa people, our culture and language is not something we check at the door. That's going to be a part of everything that I do. Mm-hmm. Like it or not, That's just who I am. And so I just want to thank the people out there. A lot of times you have people that are, you mentioned Facebook. There are people out there that are very vocal and repetitious. But more times than not, if an older Kiowa person pulls me to the side at an event or in our community or at home, and they have good words for me or encouragement, I mean, that undoes it all. Mm-hmm. That's just the ultimate, compliment and encouragement. So to hear those words from Dr. Brett, who is also my blood relative here, I just appreciate that. And it goes a long way, when you're working and going against a lot of obstacles and things like that. That encouragement that you give to somebody can really go a long way. So I just want to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Oh. Well, thank you all, to all our citizens out there. We hope that you're staying dry and getting ready for summer. Hopefully, here in Tulsa area, we've had like 2 weeks of rain. So I don't know how you've been in Norman, Dr. Brett,
but I looked at my feet the other day. I'm getting webbing.
Yeah. Well, we wish you all a good summer. We'll have our next podcast in July, so tune in. Have a good day. Hey, go on my bonta. Since we are on the discussion of education, one of the earliest, forms of education would have to be our rabbit society. We call it Polayop, which interprets rabbits. And this was an ancient society that it used to be include just the little boys, and these little boys, the polio was the beginning. It was the beginning of who they learned, how they learned to be Kiowas, what their values were, their cultural traits, but also these little rabbits, these polio, they had their own camps, their own teepees, their own horses, their own bows and arrows, and it was almost like a basic training for how to be a warrior. And so, along with this society, the polio, they had their own dance, and that dance culminated around the sun dance. So all these little boys would get together, and they would learn. Maybe they might have horse races, or learn how to set up their teepees, or learn how to shoot their bow and arrows to go out on a hunt. But it was the beginning of a warrior lifestyle. They would progress up into these other war societies like Tokongo or Thaipego, Ohomogo, Tseitan, or the other one, Altoyi, the young sheep. So with this society, it was a form of education. You learned how to be a good warrior, but you also learned values, what Kiowas value, what your people value, an identity. And so these little rabbits, they would jump up and down, and they have their own songs. And one of the primary responsibilities during the sun dance, the little rabbits would help the old calf woman society bring up sand from the river bottom, and they'd put it on the Sundance Lodge when those sun dancers might, they'd fast for 4 days, no food, no water. Sometimes they would pass out. They might fall down on the ground. So that Sundance Lodge had to be real nice, had to be cool, had to be soft. In case they fell down, they wanted something, some cushion there to be ready to take the impact. So this song I'm going to share with you today comes from the Polayo, the Little Rabbits. And now we include young girls into our rabbit society. Our rabbit dance happens on July 3rd and 4th at Carnegie Park this year in 2025, and we're going to share this transporting song. And basically the interpretation of this song says, telling all the little boys and girls to gather the sand from the river bottom and instructing them to fix up the floor, and kind of talks about how I am pitiful and I'm old, kind of telling them I need your help. And so the song goes like this here. Tali ki goi pai badai ha totem badai yom go bayai gun yai get I ga ama kong go hey yo hey. Maton ki goi pai badai ha totem badai yom boy bayai gun yai get I ga ama kong go hey yo hey. Tali ki goi pai badai ha totem badai yom boy bayai gun yai gatai ga ama ka go hey yo hey. Maton ki goi pai badai ha totem badai yom go bai gun yai gatai ga ama ka go hey yo hey. Tali ki goi pai badai ha totem badai yom go boy bayai gun yai gatai ga ama ka go hey yo hey. Matong ki goi pai badai ha totem badai yom go boy bayai gun yai gatai ga ama ka go hey yo hey. Tali ki goi pai badai ha totem badai yom boy bayai gun yai gatai ga ama ka go hey yo hey. Matong ki goi pai badai ha totem badai yom boy bayai gun yai gatai ga ama ka go hey yo hey. Ah, hey, yay. Hee-haw. Wee, woot, 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 woot. Day on, day I ho. for tuning in to this episode of Thongya, our District 7 podcast. The music was provided by Mr. Terry Tsotai. For more information on our legislative work, please visit our website, kiowatribe.org/district-7. Thank you all for tuning in. Hey, I'm I don't I.